Well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about the Jake Muller Adventures Unidentified? Stick around and find out. Bum ba bum bum ba bum ba 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 doodle 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 bwa 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 doodle 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 doodle. Hey, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. This is my uncut review of the Jake Muller Adventures Unidentified. This is an audio drama, so a little something different here today. And the synopsis from the official website of the audio drama at jakemulleradventures.com reads, security specialist and adventurer Jake Muller finds himself mixed up in a quest for the truth when he discovers a young girl who has apparently fallen from the sky. In his quest, he crosses paths with the military, politicians, theologians, men in black, and possibly extraterrestrials. The Jake Muller adventure is a journey, they say. In a broad sense, it's about the growth of a Christian as they travel through the universe of spiritual warfare. So yeah, as I said, a little something different today. Instead of a movie review, I'm reviewing an audio drama. I need to say up front that I have produced a trilogy of feature-length audio dramas myself, as well as a few other shorter audio drama projects over the last 10 plus years, and I received a review copy of this project courtesy of Darby Kern, the writer and director. So take those things into consideration however you think appropriate. I'll just try to focus myself on giving you my honest opinion here. So, what is this animal? Let's talk about the story, script, pacing, tone, that sort of thing. It's a modern-day story, modern-day setting, seemingly inspired by, I think, like 80s adventure movies, which in turn were inspired by old serial films. So tonally, Indiana Jones feels like a good comparison, although this doesn't go as dark as some of those movies do. In fact, tonally and in its content, it felt very fitting for families, including those with like elementary-age kids, even though I think the dialogue and the subject matter is likely going to go over their heads a lot of the time. It does not focus on character as much as I want. Character-driven storytelling is almost a requirement for me to enjoy most fiction these days. So I'm very particular in that way, keep that in mind, and Jake Muller is mainly focused on story and succession of events one to the other. Now, I did have trouble following the story now and then, but not necessarily because of the script, so I'm going to come back to that thought a little bit later. Unidentified has a total runtime of about 94 minutes, divided into 4 parts. The story is focused on the phenomena of UFOs and investigating their origins and their true nature. This is also clearly a Christian production, produced from a Christian worldview, and I think primarily for an audience of Christians. At the very least, I would not recommend it for non-Christians. Now, why is that? Well, because for me, I think the representation of faith is a bit too simple, convenient, and kind of clean for me, if that makes sense, including the way faith in Jesus plays into the climax of this story. But again, that's not necessarily an issue of the script, so hold on to that thought. I'm going to come back to it. I will say I dislike the pastor character a bit. His role in the script seems to be to enter a scene and be right about whatever he says. You've seen those kinds of characters in lots of fiction, of different types before. I just tend to see that kind of character and dislike them when they show up, He's kind of the infallible teacher and is also a bit heavy-handed, I think, as he seemingly loses a bit of patience with the main character, Jake, who is kind of a lapsed believer, and there's this scene where they are getting ready to eat together and the pastor is kind of realizing that Jake isn't taking the hint that the pastor wants to pray before they eat together. I'm just like, I think that's actually a poor and ungracious model for social situations when we find ourselves spending time with a believer who has lapsed in their faith. If someone has lapsed in their faith, then it's better that we have compassion for them and try to sort through what that is, or what's going on, how we can help them, rather than try to expect them to just conform to the trappings of cultural Christianity, the treatment of UFOs from a Christian perspective doesn't bring anything conceptually new that I can think of regarding their true nature. In fact, this concept was already commonly circulating in Christian bookstores by the mid to late 2000s. I won't say what that concept is, just in case you're not aware of the basic kind of position that Christians have about what UFOs are, but that's the position that they take, and they also, in a small way at the end, link it to a potential future end times story that they might play with down the line. I'm not sure where the series is going to go, but that also doesn't tread new ground, like I would have liked it to. This feels like a story written about 10 to 20 years ago, I would say, when it would have been much more original. But many Christian sci-fi writers since then have gone way beyond the usual statements made about the nature of UFOs, and are certainly no longer tied to a felt obligation of making sci-fi stories somehow connected to the end times. I think about all the different writers that are featured at a site like speculativefaith.com and Lorehaven magazine. There's just a lot of diversity and creativity that's gone far beyond the concepts that this story is playing with. But none of that may matter, and I'll get to that at the end of my review. For now, why did I have trouble with the story but not necessarily the script? Well, I think that I could most concisely say because of the performances. The cast felt made up of a mix of experienced audio performers and solid community actors who maybe volunteered to be a part of the project. But even among the solid performers, they came across to me as more commercial voiceover talent than actors with diverse experience playing diverse character types. That could also be the result of the directing and coaching they received in the studio. I don't know. In a nutshell, the performances all sounded solid to me, clearly enunciated and inflected, but also very vanilla. Like most voices were kind of leading man or leading woman type voices, instead of diverse character voices with varied voice types and manners of speaking, pacing, or bits of... There were no characters that really stuttered or had any kind of idiosyncrasies in the way that they talked. They all basically delivered their lines pretty much in a standard way that you might hear voiceover in a commercial, So it had a little bit of that kind of vibe to it. That's not entirely fair to characterize it that way, because there were moments that diverted from that, but much of the time it really felt to me like a very standard, clean kind of delivery, and I would have liked something that was, I don't know, a little more mumbly, a little more muttered, a little more subtext, something that is not directly on the page. That a good example would be if you watch the trailer for, just because this is well known, there are many examples of this, of course, but if you watch the original, the trailer recently for Terminator Dark Fate, Linda Hamilton has commented in several interviews how she had to say the line, "I'll be back," get so many different takes on that because she didn't want to do it like Arnold Schwarzenegger had done it. And in the end, she said, "I'll be back," instead of "I'll be back." That's the straightforward way to say that line. "I'll be back," or "I'll be back," or whatever, if you're, whatever you're going to do. But instead, she said, "I'll be back," which had a subtext of, this is just humdrum activity, or you guys don't know what you're doing, I'm going to have to save the day again. So there's this layer of something else that she's feeling that's being said that is not directly in the statement, "I'll be back," And so that's what I mean by subtext, if you're not familiar with that, and I would have liked a whole lot more subtext. Again, I like character stuff, and that's character-driven type of acting, and I would have liked a ton more of that throughout this. Even if the script wasn't going to be character-driven, I would have loved the performances to have been more subtext-oriented and character-driven. So let's see, I went off my notes, I got completely lost here. There were a few characters with accents that brought some, variety, I suppose, but none of them struck me as authentic. It just felt like, oh, that's an actor, that's probably an American actor doing some kind of an accent. And there were a couple accents that were actually hard for me to listen to because I was like, oh, he's going for an accent, but it's barely there. It's barely there, I would have preferred a quality over quantity approach where the script was limited to like just a handful of characters, cast with the best performers they could find, like the 5 best performers in this project, make a story that just uses those 5, and not asking also performers to do what they can't do well, such as, accents, but instead finding ways to play to their strengths, even rewriting the script mid-production to do so, which they can do in a project like this, presumably because it's not based on a pre-existing intellectual property, but of course, they're setting out to make this globe-trotting style of adventure where even if they're not trotting the globe, they're trying to represent people from different places all over the world and stuff. And so, going for something like that may not be an option. And I appreciate the rock and hard place that they are in between doing this kind of project. I personally really appreciate and relate to the struggle of trying to do very big things with very limited resources. So, and as a grassroots can-do kind of project, this is still really an achievement in audio drama. So I don't want to neglect saying that. Now, as far as the, normally in my reviews, I'd talk about the stunts and visuals, but instead I'll talk about the post-production aspect of this project. The recording and post-production was done by Gap Digital and Todd Bastide, and this is where the project really shines. I've admired Todd Bastide's work for many years, as he was behind the mixing board for the entire Left Behind audio drama series put out by Focus on the Family a number of years ago, as well as other great projects that he's done since then. And he's still schooling me as I listen to his work here and gives this project the polish that justifies having some kind of a price tag for it, which it does. From a pure post-production standpoint, this project is right up there with the best work I've heard from Gap Digital and Todd Bastide. From subtle changes to voices, depending on where they're at in the room, to what kind of room they're in, all the way to the more obviously produced scenes like flashback sequences. The production elements in this are all really great to listen to. As far as the music definitely conjures for me the vibe of 80s adventure like Indiana Jones, and keeps the tone pretty light even during action sequences. A couple of times it felt a little too on the nose for me, though, like there was a prayer scene where it was meant to be, I think, moving and kind of like helping us to feel the emotion that was intended for the scene, and I think I would have connected with the scene better actually if there had been no music, maybe, and if the performance had been handled differently maybe as well, rather than having like this sweet releasing chord progression that kind of has strings, and it's meant to help us feel a sense of tension in the chord progression and then relief as the chord progression resolves, so it was a little bit kind of on the nose for me for what the moment was, but that on the nose style, I have to say, does fit well with the overall kind of simplistic, light-toned adventure vibe, so maybe that's just my fault for not wanting that vibe from this project. As far as themes, are there any worthwhile themes of moral, philosophical, spiritual significance that might trigger some worthwhile thought or conversation? Well, certainly, I think there are. The main theme seems to be warning us against the occult dangers that are associated with many UFO experiences, and the importance of faith in Jesus to protect us from those things. But I didn't personally find these themes to be either emotionally moving or, mentally thought-provoking, in part because they felt overly familiar to me, and also because the performances kept the characters from feeling grounded and relatable to me. So I don't think for me and for the kind of audience that I create content for, I don't think it's going to be a really moving or thought-provoking kind of experience, even though the material is there. All right, now I have no idea what your tastes in audio drama are, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Peter, skip this one, unfortunately, but keep an eye on this series. See what they might change about the future installments based on samples released for the next story. I certainly changed the tone and made different choices as my Spirit Blade trilogy moved along, and so maybe something similar will happen here, and things will shape into something that would interest you more. I think it's very important for me to say, I don't think I'm the audience for this. I don't think geeks are the audience for this. I think this is best suited for an audience of Christians who want entertainment promoting a Christian worldview, who want their entertainment to remain pretty light in tone and family-friendly, but not necessarily aimed at kids, and who are not necessarily fans of sci-fi, but are open to just a little bit of it if you want to put some in there. I think for that audience, this might really scratch an itch that they've had for a while. Now, it doesn't have an MPAA rating. I would describe it as PG-ish for violence. It's pretty light, pretty tame. I think most families are going to feel comfortable having this playing in the car while they're driving kids to and from various places. All right, those are my thoughts. I'd love to get yours in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, click that bell to stay connected. What else did I want to say here? No, that's not the usual thing. Oh yeah, you can find out more about Spirit Blade Productions and all that I'm doing and how you can support it over at patreon.com/Spirit Productions. Then I hope you'll join us over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth.
The future. A world where the quest for truth is a thing of the past.
Everybody claims to be spiritual, whatever the drac that means, but nobody really knows anything about the spiritual world.
Merrick, you can't talk like this.
And they'll do anything to keep it out of our future.
It's Atlantis! They found us again!
Open fire!
An alien race has blessed us with amazing technology,
Merrick, the world we live in is incredible.
while a race of demons destroys who we are.
Do you believe in the supernatural, Mr. Vandarius?
We shall be in your blood, human.
Brothers, tonight marks the end of our subjection to the only. Humanity will be wiped from the map of history.
We've traveled across our world and even into another.
What we can see with our eyes is of little consequence in the grand scheme of things. It is what occurs in the other worlds around us that should have us concerned.
What the frisk just happened? Was that the other world?
We've been hunted by humans, aliens, and things I don't have a name for.
I'm the future, Vincent. The ultimate life form.
There's too many of them! One goes down and 3 more take its place!
All because we're looking for the one weapon that can bring an end to this conflict forever.
Give me the sword!
A weapon known only as the Spirit Blade.
Oh, I can feel its power from here. Oh yeah? Well, tell me what this feels like.
For more information, visit spiritblade.com.